The night was bitter cold, the kind of cold that made the wind cut like knives against the skin. Nathan, a 36-year-old single father, was driving home after his late shift at the factory. His old pickup rattled down the nearly empty road as snowflakes danced across the headlights. His daughter, Emily, only 8 years old, was waiting for him at home with a blanket wrapped tightly around her little shoulders, trying to stay warm in their small rented house with the broken heater. Nathan's life was not easy. Since his wife had passed away during childbirth, it had been just him and Emily against the world. Money was always short, bills stacked like an enemy that never retreated, and his health often came second to making sure Emily had food in her belly. Yet, through every struggle, he kept one thing alive, a fierce determination to protect and raise his daughter with kindness, honesty, and strength. That night, as he drove, Nathan noticed something unusual up ahead. A black luxury car had swerved off the icy road and into a ditch. Its hazard lights blinked desperately in the darkness. For a moment, he thought about driving past. He was exhausted, and Emily was waiting, but something inside him told him to stop. He pulled over and rushed through the snow. Inside the car was a man, unconscious, with blood trickling from his forehead. The airbags had deployed, and the front of the vehicle was crushed like paper. Nathan quickly forced the door open, pulling the man out into the freezing air. He carried him to his truck, wrapping him in his old work jacket. Nathan didn't know it then, but the man he had just saved was Richard Langford, a billionaire entrepreneur known across the world. Richard was one of those names that appeared in financial magazines, a man who owned skyscrapers, private jets, and companies that employed thousands. But at that moment, he wasn't a billionaire. He was just a broken man, vulnerable and bleeding in the arms of someone who had nothing. Nathan drove straight to the hospital, his calloused hands gripping the wheel tight. He filled out no forms, gave no name, he simply handed the injured man to the nurses, whispered, "Take care of him," and disappeared before anyone could ask questions. For Nathan, it was never about recognition. He didn't need thanks, money, or attention. His daughter was his world, and he had to get back home to her. So, without a word, he vanished. The next morning, Richard Langford woke up in the hospital bed. Confused, bandaged, and weak, he asked the nurses who had brought him in. But no one knew the man's name. Just someone who helped and left, they told him. Richard felt a deep, gnawing emptiness, because in all his life of wealth, power, and influence, he had never met someone who gave without expecting anything in return. He swore to find that man. Meanwhile, Nathan's struggles only grew heavier. The factory he worked at announced layoffs. His paycheck was cut, and soon he was behind on rent. Emily, though young, noticed the worry in her father's tired eyes. She would place her tiny hand over his rough ones and say, "Daddy, it's okay. We'll be fine. We always are." But Nathan knew the truth. Their life was hanging by a thread. He sold what little he could, skipped meals to make sure Emily ate, and even worked extra shifts fixing broken machinery for neighbors. Still, the money wasn't enough. One night, as he tucked Emily into bed, she asked him softly, "Daddy, why don't we have what other kids have? Why don't we have a mommy? Why don't we have a big warm house?" Nathan's heart cracked, but he hugged her tightly and whispered, "Because God gave me you. And that's all the treasure I'll ever need." At the same time, Richard's search for his rescuer became almost an obsession. He sent his team to scan CCTV footage, questioned every hospital staff member, and even placed ads offering a reward for information. Yet no one came forward. The mystery haunted him. Here he was, a man surrounded by people who only cared for his wealth, and the only person who saved him asked for nothing. Weeks later, fate crossed their paths again. Nathan was working at a small repair shop, fixing engines for a meager wage, when a sleek black car pulled up. Out stepped Richard Langford, fully recovered, dressed in his usual sharp suit. He looked around until his eyes fell on Nathan, his rough hands covered in grease, his shirt torn at the sleeves. Richard approached. "It was you," he said softly. "You saved me." Nathan froze. He didn't want recognition, didn't want to be part of the world Richard came from. "You must be mistaken," he muttered, returning to his work. But Richard wasn't mistaken. He insisted, offering money, jobs, even a new house. Nathan refused each one. "I didn't save you for a reward," he said firmly. I did it because it was the right thing to do. Yet Richard, humbled and fascinated by this man, couldn't walk away. He saw something rare in Nathan, an honesty, a strength, and a love for his daughter that money could never buy. But life had other challenges waiting. Emily fell ill. Her small body burned with fever, and Nathan couldn't afford the expensive treatment the doctor recommended. He tried everything, pleaded for loans, pawned his tools, but nothing worked. Richard found out and rushed to the hospital. He covered every cost, making sure Emily had the best doctors and medicines. Nathan, though grateful, struggled with pride. Accepting help felt like failure. But when he looked at his daughter's pale face, he swallowed his pride and let Richard help. As days passed, Emily recovered, and a strange bond grew between Richard and Nathan's little family. Richard, who had everything, found joy in the simplest moments, playing board games with Emily, eating Nathan's modest dinners, and listening to laughter fill the tiny house. For the first time in years, he felt like a human being, not just a billionaire. The greatest challenge, however, was not money or illness. It was trust. Nathan had built walls around his heart ever since losing his wife. He feared losing people he cared about. He feared Emily would grow attached to Richard, only to have him disappear one day. But Richard stayed. Not with wealth, not with power, he stayed with presence, with kindness, and with loyalty. And slowly, Nathan realized something. Sometimes, family is not only given by blood, it's built by love. In the end, the story of the single dad who rescued a billionaire was not about wealth or charity. It was about two broken men finding healing through an act of kindness. Nathan learned that it was okay to accept help, and Richard learned that true wealth is not counted in dollars but in hearts touched and lives changed. And as Emily hugged Richard one evening and called him Uncle Richard, both men understood, life had brought them together for a reason. Final message for viewers. Kindness is the one currency that never loses value. Nathan didn't save Richard for money, and Richard didn't help Emily for gratitude. They both gave from the heart, and in return, they found something priceless: family, hope, and love. If this story touched your heart, I want to hear your thoughts. Would you have done the same if you were in Nathan's shoes? Share your feelings in the comments below. And if you believe in the power of kindness, don't forget to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to my channel, Be Kind Always, for more inspiring stories that remind us of the goodness still left in this world.